This is part 3 of our Houston Kold video. Check out what we're going to be working on today. Alright, so now that you've seen what we're going to be doing, jump into Davinci and we're going to just extend out this fusion clip to the next marker that we have here. And now I'm going to actually make another cut right at this first marker and just separate those two. And we're going to start to color these. Just to make it look a little bit better on the timeline. So I'll give this one an orange. We'll come in here, we'll give this one a lime green, and we'll just quickly give it more and more colors. Maybe I'll give this one violet. Okay, we'll save things up. We're gonna jump right into the fusion page, and in this part of things, we're going to start getting rid of nodes that we don't need, so that way we don't use as much processing power. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the original video into viewer 1, and now I'm going to go ahead and start getting rid of things that we don't need. So this background of Iman, no longer need this. Delete that. The background, let's see what we got on here, just black background. We might need that. Let's see. No, we don't need that. We can get rid of that. We'll get rid of this because we don't need this anymore. And let's see, we got the Iman cutout. We'll also get rid of that. All right, so this should clean up quite a bit of space. Now we can kind of reorganize everything and just go back to our normal workflow. So I'll quickly just save that real quick and just jump on in, make sure we got everything in place. So we still got the background. All right, we still pretty much got everything we need. Let me go ahead and bring our clip onto the second viewer. So I'm gonna hit 2 on this merge, and now we're going to start working on the third part of this clip. So I went ahead and we actually have a YouTube clip that we can bring on in here. I believe it's this guy right here. We can go ahead and we can take the image plane and transform right here of the text, because, whoops, I didn't mean to grab that. I want the image plane and the transform. We can take this because we want our YouTube page to go in front of the text. So this is our YouTube page. Got it right here. It's Iman Godzi's YouTube page. Nice. So now let's go ahead and connect this to our merge. And now let's bring this back up on the screen, see what we got. And now we got something like that. Okay, nice. So now I'm going to go to where this is fully on frame, because I believe we're almost there. So I'm going to adjust the different angles of our transform node. And so we'll come in here to our transform, and we will just adjust the Z so that way it tilts in the opposite direction. We'll also adjust both the X and maybe the Y, because we want this to just barely show the top. So we'll go ahead and we'll adjust the Y in here. Might be easier if we even reset this image plane as well. If we just do that, we can go back another 0.04. Let's see if that's in the opposite direction that we want. So let's just move it in front of the text. Pretty good. I'll move it over. I'll just move it up a little bit. We'll zoom in on the clip because we only want to see really 3 sections. We'll come on in real close and maybe we'll do something like that. We'll come up to the top again, make sure that you see everything. And now let's just make sure this is where it hits the top. Now we'll set some keyframes on everything. And we can also come back to the beginning where it's not on the screen, which is literally the first frame. And we can set some more keyframes. And now I'm going to go ahead and adjust it so that way it's not on the screen. Let's see how it comes up here. It comes up kind of sideways, so it might be okay if we just drop it down here, but it's also going to come out this way. So let's drop it down. make sure that it's fully off the screen. Want to make sure it looks kind of natural coming in here. So hopefully I didn't take that too far, but let's see what we got here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just make sure everything's smoothed out. So I just need the transform actually. We can go ahead and Control A, S, and all right. So we got it to come up on the screen. It comes up on the screen way too fast, but we'll fix that in a sec. What I am also going to do is I'm going to bring in a transform node after the media in one node, and we'll rename this to I'm in YouTube. And now I'm going to come into the transform and I'm going to wrap it. This is just going to make it, if we put the transform node on the screen for a second, this is just going to make it so our screenshot, when we move it, it just keeps wrapping around. It just keeps creating the same image over and over and over again, so we can infinitely extend this. So I'll go ahead and reset the center value. I'll pop my head back into the merge 2 right here. And now we can see that on the screen. And we're going to end up playing around with the easing, but I want to come to that keyframe where the transform was. And now we can just spin the wheel a little bit. Let's come all the way down here to when this kind of stops moving, which it never really does. So we'll just keyframe this some more. And now we should be able to just infinitely move this guy. I'm sorry, we need these keyframes on our transform. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keyframe the center value, and we're going to come back to this frame right here. We're going to keyframe the center value. And now I'll just spin it a bunch where it goes a couple times around. You're going to have to work with this to get it exact. I'm just going to make it quick for this video, but you guys can make it precise if you want. We might tweak it a little bit. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to bring this down because that's way too much. So maybe we'll do something like 2. And we're going to start adjusting the easings on here. So I'll come into this transform and let's see how this looked on the screen. We got this pop up. So that looks pretty good, but when it starts spinning, it's a bit faster in the beginning and then it starts to slow down towards the end. So what we're going to need to do is come into our transform, and we'll hit Control A and S to smooth things out. And then you got 2 options. You can either grab upon the handles right here, which I'm not going to do. And I'm going to hit Control A again, hit T. Now we can actually play in with the ease in and the ease out value. So this ease in is going to make it faster in the beginning and slower in the end. That's kind of why things start, this curve starts getting less curvy in the end. It's more flat across. So we're going to try something like that, 80 and 33, see if we get something similar. All right, so once you get the easing that you like and you have your image adjusted exactly how you want, we can actually come in and start creating this red effect, this red tint that starts coming across the image. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to come over here and we're going to come after the transform and bring in a color corrector. And now we're going to put keyframes on everything. So let's just keyframe everything, and it's going to be normal at first. So we'll leave it normal at first, and then we'll say maybe around right here, we'll keyframe it. So take away those first keyframes. We don't need them right there because it's going to be normal. And now come to the end where it really starts getting red. So we'll come to here. And now we're going to adjust the red value, make it really red. You can change this from full to fast to better. Figure out which one works best and then play around with the the gain values, the contrast, all those different things to make it a bit more red. Zoom in a little bit closer. And so essentially you're making it a little bit more darker. All right, so now you should be left with something like this. Starts to get more red, starts to get more red, and red. Boom. Okay, so now we got to actually move on to the text because the text comes in here. So what we're going to do for this is notoriously kind of comes in the Z space. So there's a couple different ways that we can do this. What we're going to do is we're going to grab this image plane and transform. We're going to copy and paste it. We're going to bring in our text. We're going to drag it in here, connect this to our merge, and now take your text and let's see what it says first. So we got notoriously known, all uppercase. So notoriously known. We'll need character level styling. And we're just going to make sure that this pops up on the screen. So we'll go ahead and we will reset all the stuff on this transform, and we will do the same for the image plane, but there's not really much that we need to do. So I'm going to come in here and we just need to make this bigger than -4 realistically. So we'll make it -3.46, 3.5. Okay, looks pretty good. And we'll keep this Z value here. We'll keep this Z value here for the rotation. So I'll bring that back in. And that's going to kind of center things out. Maybe we'll even come to the -4. See if this brings it in more towards the center, our text. Not really. So let's see, if we copy these values, our text completely disappears. See if we make our text bigger. All right, so copy the values that I got on this transform, and now we're just going to reposition the text. So I'll bring in a transform node. We'll do it this way, and I'll just recenter it on the screen. We'll kind of just balance this out at an angle that looks like it's kind of straight up and down. We'll come to about the center of the screen. We'll place it in there, and we'll have something like this. All right, now we're going to come into notoriously known. We're going to first increase the font. We're going to change it to Babis New, and we'll increase the font maybe to something about this. We'll go ahead and come into the modifiers tab. We'll bring the text up on the screen, select known, and change the font size so that way it's the same size as notoriously. And now we're going to bring the first guy back up on the screen, and we're going to adjust the line spacing as well. So we'll come in here and we will quickly adjust the line spacing, make it a lot closer together. And you see that we have like this dotted effect in here. There's two ways that I'm thinking that we could probably achieve this effect, but we're going to need to do this the tricky way. And so by tricky way, I just mean very graphics intensive. So go ahead and connect your transform here. We're going to hit shift space and bring in a P render node, and we'll grab that, and we'll grab in another one, P image emitter, bring that one in as well. So if you've never used a particle system in Davinci, this is very graphics enabled. If you don't have your render node right here on hardware, I suggest that you do that. Otherwise, your computer might decide to blow up, and this takes a very long time, which is why it's not the ideal method to work with. But we're going to come into the P image emitter. I'm just going to bump up the lifespan all the way, and we're going to come in here to style. We're going to come down here to Ngon. We're going to select circular, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the P emitter to the P renderer, and then the P renderer to our transform. All right, so everything should be on here now, and now you're really going to want to make sure you don't have a lot of nodes in here, not doing the same stuff. And we'll also make it so that way we come into the emitter, the renderer I mean, and see if we can make it 3D. We can't. So we'll come into the emitter and we're going to go over to the size of our particles and we'll just adjust the size all the way up. So you don't see much change on the screen, but realistically, I believe in the background, this is working. Like I said, it's just extremely graphics intense, and so it might not appear on the screen right away. You might need to give it some time. Let me make sure there's no settings that we're missing here. Right, so we actually need to come in and adjust our X and Y density. That's why we're not seeing anything on the screen. And then after you adjust that, you should be able to see some stuff, some particles on the screen, and your image should look more like this. But as you can see, it's not really loading in. That's how strong the particle system is in Davinci. That's how much processing power it takes up. So you really are going to need to wait for this one, and it could take quite a bit of time, unfortunately. So what I'm going to see if I can do is if I hit restart and re-roll and see if we can get this to kind of render out here. We got something like that, and now we can come back in and go to our merge 2 over here, bring that up on the screen. We got like this faded text that looks pretty similar, and maybe we'll just try and see if we can add in a brightness contrast to make this appear. See, as opposed to adjusting anything in the particles system. So let's see if we can get that to appear. Great. We can get it to appear on the screen. So we'll do something like that, and let's come in here and just double check everything. Nice. So now it looks a lot more similar to what we got going on here with the dots. And now as far as everything goes, we just need to create the animation for Notoriously Known. So I'll come back here to where the animation starts, which is right about here, a couple frames back. All right, so that's where it starts. So right here, it won't be on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here to our text node, and I'm just going to make a duplicate of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all this. I'm going to hit Control C and then Shift, and then hit Control Shift V and make some instances. And now we're going to come into our text node. We're going to create a mask around both of them. So I'll make one mask for this one, which is going to be the Notoriously on the top. So I'll bring the text into the frame, and we got another P-render node, so I might need to roll these on in here. So let me just make sure that this pops up. Now it doesn't want to pop anything on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to come into the rectangle. We're going to adjust the settings that we got here. Just change it so that way Notoriously is in here. And now come and copy this first rectangle mask, Control V, bring it down here, and we're just going to invert it. So now if we bring this into the second viewer, we should see known here, which we do. And now we can bring this back on our screen. All right, so it's just going to take a second because we got the particle system. You'll see on your end what I really mean by that. It does take a while. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, and we might even honestly just disable the particles till the end. So I'm going to disable these. It's going to make it a lot easier to work for now. And we'll come into where we'll even disable the brightness and contrast. And we should see our text on the screen, but we're not for some reason. Maybe I need to completely disconnect these from the node flow. Let me check. All right, so yeah, we needed to disconnect those from the node flow for a second. So Now we're not seeing known on the screen. I just want to make sure that this is doing what it's supposed to do. And we need some sort of merge in here. So that's why we're not seeing known on the screen. So now we should be able to see it if we bring this back up in our viewer. Now we can come to where notoriously starts fading in, which is right about here. All right, so now we're gonna work on the opacity. So come to where notoriously is off the screen. We'll come to this the second text node, come over to the shading tab, right click on opacity and hit de-instance. Then we're gonna come to the first guy right here. We're gonna set a keyframe on opacity under shading, and now we're gonna come to where notoriously is fully on the screen, maybe about right here. Set another keyframe, check the first box, make sure that the opacity is on 0 for the first frame, and then we're gonna do the same thing for known. So we'll come to where known is off the screen, which is on this frame, and we'll set it to 0 and see where it's fully on the screen, about right here. Set it to 1, and now we can go ahead and we got the right keyframes for the opacity, but we also need the text to kind of start coming towards us. So we can do a couple things here. We could either add in a DVE node, but we can also change the font size, which is probably what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to go to where the font starts settling in, which is right about this frame. And we should already have the size de-instanced, I believe. No, we don't. So I'll de-instance the size. And now I'm going to adjust the first size parameter on here. And we'll also come to the frame where it starts coming on the screen because it's going to be something different. And now we're going to come to the ending frame where the text is last here because it starts getting smaller, I believe. Yep, starts getting smaller. We'll set a keyframe right here on the text, set one on the instance. We'll come back to the text, and we'll go to this keyframe. We'll set one on known. And now we're just going to adjust the size of the final keyframe. So we'll do something right here. Let's see what we got. We'll just make it a little bit smaller, and we're gonna want the same exact value for the second guy. Maybe not the same exact value because we want known to shrink. So maybe something like that. And now we'll come back to where this is, and we're going to adjust the size of notoriously. So I'm going to even get rid of the known on here because we already have it on the other one. And I'm going to adjust the size of notoriously in the beginning here. So I'll come one frame forward when it starts popping up on the screen, and we'll just figure out what kind of size parameter we got. We'll even adjust the opacity a little bit just so I can see it real quick. So now that we've deleted known, I need to come into the rectangle mask, make sure that this is still on the screen. So we'll come in, change the opacity just for a second, and we'll readjust this box so that way we get everything in there. And now we can bring the opacity back down. So I'll go ahead, I'll bring this merge back onto our screen, and now we should be able to see this guy on here. If we bring the opacity up, it's in white, so it's a little hard to read, but maybe if I just adjust it to blue for a second, make it a little bit easier. And we can come in and we can actually just adjust the font size right here. So we're going to make it a bit bigger. Let's just make sure this box fits the whole thing. And now we should have something good. So we can go ahead and we can readjust everything in here. We can come over to, and for some reason this changed to notoriously too. Oh, we have our instance node on. So I need to change this from de-instance from notoriously to what we had before. We need known. So all caps, known, and we'll get rid of notoriously. All right, so now that we de-instance this, we need to come up to the top. We need to uncheck the keyframe and uncheck the keyframe here. And now I'm going to get rid of notoriously, and I'm going to get rid of known here. And now we're left with something like this. We need to readjust the size of the text so that way it matches up with notoriously. So I'll come here to where it's first on the screen, something like this, adjust the font size, and we'll do the same thing here. And then we're gonna shrink everything down. So maybe we'll shrink it down to that size and do something like that. I'll adjust the line spacing on here, and this is I'm gonna need to de-instance it. Or no, we won't adjust the line spacing, we'll adjust the layout. So I'll de-instance the layout, the center, and I'll keyframe this value right here. So that way it stays a good distance away right here, and we'll change the size. I want this bigger. Change my mind. Come in here, make this bigger, make it like 16 or 15.95. Change this one to what this needs to be. All right, so now we got something like this with blue text. We can go ahead, go back to our shading, bring this up, and now we're gonna have something like this. It's gonna come in here, notoriously is gonna come in, our text is gonna shrink, and it's going to go completely off the screen right here. So I want to make sure we come into our text, come into the settings. I want to make sure our text disappears off the screen. So we'll come into our text. We'll go to our global in and out. We'll go to, it looks like 165, and that should make it disappear off the screen. Let's see if that did that for the instance. It did. And so now we got something like this. So now we can go ahead and smooth out these keyframes. So we'll come into the spline tab, exit the keyframes, click on text, click on instance, and we'll just start going about this guy right here. Let's do it little by little. So we'll do the size first, and I'll do it one by one as well. So untick opacity. We'll do size, smooth that out, smooth this out, do opacity, Control AS. I don't think we're gonna need to adjust the displacement. Nope, so we'll get rid of that. Now I'll do the opacity on the instance, Control AS, size, S. Now let's see what we got. So it's not exactly the same, but you can play around with the spline tab. We probably didn't even need to smooth it out. We could have left it linear, but you can also play around with the ease in, ease out values to get it exactly like his. So that way they're both the same. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to just maybe throw on some motion blur on this transform. So we'll come over to this transform, we'll go to settings, motion blur. You always want to do this in the end. We'll change the shutter, and that's just going to make it come in nice and crispy. And we'll do that for the transform up here as well. We'll do the motion blur and just crank it on up. Maybe not that much. Maybe we'll position it down a little bit. We'll change this value and we'll bring it down a little bit more. Maybe something more like that, so it comes out a little less distorted, but there's still a little bit of motion blur. So now let's make sure that there is motion blur on our renderer, which there's not. So let's go ahead and increase this on our renderer as well. I may not have included this in the last couple videos. You also want motion blur in the previous renderers on the other Fusion clips, so make sure you go add that in case I missed that right there. So now that we got that on there, we can come over to where we have our P image emitter, and we can connect this back into the node pipeline. Go ahead and re-enable these, and we're just going to need to render these back on in here. Make sure everything is connected, which it's not. So connect the brightness and contrast to our instance, and that's not what we wanted. We want it on the yellow input, so connect it to the yellow input, not the mask. And now we got something like this. And now we're gonna hit restart and pre-roll. I'm not sure which one actually starts to render out the process, but I just clicked both buttons and it seems to work every time. And now we just gotta wait for the render node, which can take some time. And it looks like we have this instance node that's not connected to our other one. So go ahead and connect that, and we're going to re-render out this guy right here. So restart, pre-roll, and just wait for it to render. So when rendering, I want to make this less blurry, so I'm actually going to move these transform nodes right here, and we're just going to hit yes on that guy. We're going to bring in the transform nodes behind the image emitters, so the particles, and we'll just bring these in right here. So I'll grab this transform and bring it in, and now we can re-render out everything, re-roll, re-render, and see what we got. So quick little tip when using particles in Davinci, you're going to want to make sure you uncheck high quality, right click here and uncheck motion blur and high quality here. Otherwise you're going to have some problems with your computer. Honestly, for this tutorial, the particle effects just take too long to work in Davinci, so I'm going to have to disable them for the tutorial, and I'll show you the finished result at the end. So it looks like our mask is getting cut off for known, so let me come in here and just adjust the height on here, make it a bit bigger. So I made an adjustment to the opacity in here earlier. I just need to come in and correct that a little bit. We're going to make sure that this keyframe, the second keyframe, is just unchecked essentially. Now we got it appearing on the screen, and now we can see the finished result. And if you guys got some value out of today's video, I'm going to be posting part 4 of this video soon, the last and final part. I'll make sure to link it up either in one of these two corners of this video so you guys can check it out, and I'll see you guys there.